Hello, thank you for joining me. This is an introduction to the MA in Music Production at LCC. So, welcome. My name is Dr. Rachael Finney, and I am the course leader for MA Music Production at LCC UAL. So, these first kind of few slides, I'm going to kind of just give an overview of the course and talk about the course structure. Staff, technical facilities, and so on. And then finally, we'll kind of close by talking a little bit about the application process and the portfolio and video task and statement and so on. So here's just a kind of brief overview of the MA in Music Production here at London College of Communication. So we are part of the Sound and Music program here at LCC, which is situated in the Screen School. So we are a kind of deeply creative and critical music production course. This is the approach that we take to think about music production and do music production. As such, we're very balanced between research and practice. So we ask students to really think about, well, what are the kind of inquiries that you have whilst you're kind of undertaking your production project? Like, what are the ideas that you're trying to test or to think about? And how does the practice kind of help you understand your inquiry, or how might it inform or even create kind of new knowledges? So as such, we very much think of the work that students do as being kind of rooted in practice-led and practice-based research. So we do not kind of see research and practice as separate entities, but they're very much kind of situated together. And what you make and what you create should be treated as a form of research that produces kind of knowledges, in addition to further kind of contextual research through theory, kind of conceptual inquiries, and so on. Music production, you know, in a broad sense, is highly collaborative. Very few music producers work alone, and as such, the MA is highly collaborative. Most units, most work, most projects that you'll be undertaking throughout this MA will involve some level of collaboration at some point, whether that's working with a musician, working with a vocalist, working with an engineer to help you engineer the session that you have with the vocalist, whether it's working with a label, and so on. And part of this course is to help you to develop and enhance some of those kind of collaborative skills that are involved with production. The goal of the MA is to help you build a truly kind of creative music production portfolio that aligns with the kind of professional, creative, academic desires that you have, really. You're going to see throughout these slides, there's images on some of the slides, and these are some of past alumni's work, and you can kind of get a sense of the very different kinds of production practices or approaches to production that our students explore and think about. So here on the left, we have a piece of work from another student, with a student who's particularly interested in collaboration and working in particular kind of formats and medias. So much of their work took the form of dub plates or vinyl pressings or even kind of cassette, and they were interested in the space between the kind of recorded moment and the kind of media in which we might engage with it as a listener. So here, this slide has an image from a music video from a student. So again, many of our students are kind of self-producers, are artist producers who make and produce their own music and think about all the different types of kind of ways in which their music might be engaged with, including kind of music videos. So a little bit about the structure of the course. So this MA is still currently a 15-month program where it runs from September to the following December. Throughout those 15 months, students undertake 5 core units, culminating in a final major project. And there is opportunity at the end of the MA to participate in an end of course showcase. This can be in the guise of almost a kind of exhibition of work, a kind of formal presentation of work, but also we're open to thinking about kind of live performance showcases and so on. So just a little kind of comment about the 5 core units. So in the first term, in the autumn term, when you begin in September, you undertake the first unit, which is the practices of music production. And this unit is really an opportunity for students to rethink their approach to production and potentially begin to explore and experiment with different approaches to production that they potentially haven't had the opportunity to participate in prior to the MA. It really is an opportunity for students to get on the same page, kind of in terms of the studio spaces, to think about the different technical facilities that are available, and to what extent as a producer you want, as a student, you would like to frame your own production practice as working with or through kind of some of those kind of technical spaces. We have students who are very interested in the kind of technology, almost bordering on a engineering role, and other students who are less interested in that, and we're absolutely happy to support both. Production isn't a fixed practice. There is not one way to produce. There is not one type of producer. There are several kind of typologies of production that students get to explore and reflect on and think about, well, what kind of producer am I? Or what kind of producer would I like to be? So as an MA, we are a Master of Arts. We're not a technical training program. We are an MA in music production. And we take a very kind of balanced approach between thinking about production through theoretical lenses, through conceptual lenses, through kind of practical lenses, but also kind of technical lenses as well. And we want students to have this balance. It's not all simply technical. It's not all simply practical. We want to put what we're doing into a conversation with relevant discourse, with debates around production and music and cultural theory and so on and so on. So we really kind of encourage students and kind of ask students to do the same with their own practice. As mentioned, production is highly collaborative. And we take an equally collaborative approach to running the course and thinking about the course. So throughout each unit, as I said, you are likely to encounter a collaborative moment at some point, whether it is more explicitly collaborative, you are doing a collaborative project, or actually where it requires you to reach out to a musician, to a mixing engineer, to someone who could master something for you, and think about, how do you collaborate, how do you speak and communicate what is required of that selected collaborative partner. Throughout each unit, we want students to be able to explore kind of different modes of music production, to think about production as a very elastic and expansive role. So one is able to kind of navigate their own practice, but also kind of navigate a professional landscape in a meaningful way. So as such, we ask students to think about the different kind of types of producer or production there are, and to experiment with those types of production to see kind of where they might be able to develop skills or things that they're particularly kind of adept at. That could be really useful for the kind of future development of their career. And the course is really here to help those with an existing kind of production practice to refine your creative voice, to be able to give you opportunity to have time to really think about your ideas, to think about your practice in creative and critical ways, and to be able to kind of begin to kind of situate that practice and that thinking across kind of different fields of inquiry. And I think, I think any MA and this MA is, particularly, it's an opportune moment to do that. Again, because we don't think of production as a singular mode, as a fixed role, we are keen to support students direct their own production pathway. So some students develop very multi-path kind of production practices where they are a variety of different things, where they're able to be an engineer or they're able to songwrite. Where others think slightly differently. They want to be the kind of producer who runs a record label and is almost a kind of producer, kind of manager, and finds material for other artists. Many of our students are artist producers themselves, so they're interested in self-production and how they can kind of enhance their production skills as a way to develop their own kind of artistic and musical practice as a musician or a musical artist. And we're here to kind of support all of the different pathways that a student might want to undertake. So just a note on the kind of teaching and learning and assessment expectations for this MA. So again, here we have some images of different work that students have produced in the past. So again, students very interested in kind of format, rethinking uses of AI. We have here a project where we have almost like a manifesto of how one might work with AI to produce and create compositions, alternative approaches to kind of arrangement and compositional work we have here with these kind of letters on a Rubik's cube. So again, we're an MA that really supports students to deeply kind of experiment with their practice and experiment and think and rethink what we might consider production to be. I think one of the exciting things with music production and this particular MA is that we want to think in a very future-facing way. And I like to think of our MA students as contributing to the future of music production. The things that we can test and experiment with and explore and develop on this course can begin to kind of have a real impact and effectively change some current kind of modes of practice that potentially we feel might need changing. So coming back to just teaching and learning and assessment. So the kind of core teaching, which take the form of lectures, seminars, kind of workshops, and so on, take place over 2 days in the week. In addition to those 2 days, so those sessions, your attendance is expected. Attendance is mandatory for these sessions. In addition to that, students have regular one-to-one and group tutorials. So one-to-one tutorials, both for unit work, for coursework, but also for kind of professional development tutorials as well, where we start to discuss and think about kind of things beyond the course or beyond the particular work that you're doing, whether this be further academic interests such as undertaking a PhD or particular kind of professional development that you'd like to explore. And we can discuss how and to what extent the course might be able to kind of support some of those desires. And then, of course, we have unit tutorials, and this is where the tutorials are focused on the work that you are doing for particular units, again, conceptually, practically, technically, and so on. And then group tutorials, of course. In addition to that, in addition to core teaching, regular tutorials, we have visiting practitioner program. This is where we have invited practitioners, whether they be studio executives, label executives, sorry, studio owners, artists, producers, of course, engineers, and so on, who come and speak with you about their own career, and also, where possible, or where we feel relevant, run workshops with students. We Of course, then give space to independent study and studio time. So when you're not in a lecture, seminar, or workshop, you're not having a tutorial, or you're not participating in the visitor practitioner program, then you're expected to be undertaking independent study and potentially being in the studios. So the studios for music production students are bookable spaces. We very much consider them, the students. They're there for you to book, whether you're booking for a recording session, or whether you're booking because you want to explore the Roland tape echo that we've got, or you just want to kind of familiarize yourself with the desk, or you want to kind of explore working with an engineer and you've asked a student to engineer a session for you and you kind of want to practice that. Fantastic. That is the way to kind of use those studios. As music production students, we do permit our students to have invited guests, such as musicians. You would book those musicians into the studio, again, using professional systems to help you kind of get to grips with working in and with professional spaces. So in terms of assessment and the kinds of work that you would be submitting for this MA, there's a kind of range of different assessment elements. So project portfolios, where you'll be documenting the development of a project, a creative project, and annotating and reflecting on that development as it's under process, as it's in development, and you would submit that as a digital portfolio. Also kind of critical reflection, where we ask you to write kind of critical reflective reports and essays where you're reflecting on the project or a project that you've undertaken, putting it into kind of conversation with kind of relevant discourse. And then of course more academic writing, more kind of formal academic writing, where you're beginning to develop an argument through a piece of writing related to the subject area of music production. Formal presentations, where you kind of present on a piece of practice or present kind of research, and participation in group critiques. Group critiques are more kind of formative assessment opportunities, where feedback is there to help you develop a project further, where the project portfolios, reflective and academic writing and formal presentations and so on, are summative assessment. This is where you receive a kind of grade and then written feedback responding to the submission. So who studies this MA in music production? So we have often a very diverse cohort, students from a variety of backgrounds, including artist producers. So again, those who self-produce, who are musical artists in their own right, who are interested in expanding their knowledge of production and potentially producing for other people as well. Sound artists, people coming from a more kind of experimental space, engineers and music technologists, record label owners, composers, sound designers, basically folks who are interested in all things sonic. And we are open to, people from a variety of backgrounds, including, applicants not necessarily having, prior formal academic qualifications in the area of music production. If that might be you, that is not a problem. Many producers or people working in production come from a more independent practice, and that is really exciting. Our kind of students are, people who are interested in thinking about recorded music in all its guises, from highly experimental composition to kind of hyperpop and everything imaginable in between. Folks are interested in thinking about recorded music critically and creatively. That is generally, what our cohort kind of thinks like, and where their interests lie. Applicants and students, often have very experimental and creative mindsets. This is something that we're keen as an MA to foster and encourage, to encourage students to think and be experimental in what they're doing, to even if it goes wrong, it's not necessarily a problem. A lot can be learned from things actually not working. So we really encourage students to be experimental in their approach, but also be experimental in their kind of practice and the kinds of music that they might be working with, to think kind of creatively and be open to being creative and being experimental. In terms of some of the things that alumni have gone on to do or are beginning to go on to do, because we remain quite a new course, we've had students kind of become record label founders, of course, undertaking freelance production, being self-producers, producing their own music, being mixing engineers. You know, of course, a mixing engineer is a distinct role. It's not something necessarily that a producer is involved in. It's a separate role. However, because of the nature of much of the work that students are involved with, often, students really develop their ear and become incredibly good mixing engineers. And that is a distinct role that, students often begin to pursue in addition to being a producer, being a mixing engineer. Some students become interested in being kind of more artist managers or thinking of production through more kind of managerial lens, working with and seeking out songwriters to work with or to write for an artist. So again, as I said, production isn't a fixed thing. There's lots of different types of production. Working with sync work, so working with labels and, film companies or TV companies, documentary filmmakers, to think about sync work, what works might work well in a sync context for television, film, and so on. Live engineering, because there's opportunity to really explore and develop your kind of technical skills. Often students become interested in live engineering, as well as kind of founding their own kind of studios. This is something increasingly students become quite interested in. So in terms of college-wide and specialist facilities, I want to start by just focusing on specialist facilities first. So here we have some images of some facilities available to music production students. So of course, as music production students, you have dedicated music production studios. One image, we can see partially of a studio, we can at least see a part of the control room. This control room is connected to a live room, and there we have further studios built like this, and these are dedicated to music production students. And as I say, these are bookable spaces. We do some teaching in these spaces, of course, but they are bookable and really for students to work with. We also have composition studios. We have an image of one of the composition studios here. This can be particularly useful for, of course, composers, and also kind of playback opportunities. This particular space is set up with 5.1, and also for kind of mixing for Dolby Atmos. We have a performance lab that has multi-channel capabilities, but also it has a large kind of nave desk in it. So this could be particularly useful for larger kind of ensemble recording or playback opportunities, or mixing. If you think I really want to mix through the desk, but I want a different kind of space to kind of play back the mix that I'm working with. The performance lab is bookable. It is a teaching space, but it is bookable for students. We have a synth workbench. We have a whole kind of music production studio with a range of kind of synths and all sorts of kind of equipment in it, particularly for music production students. We have a really expansive kit catalogue for both on-site and off-site use. So the production studios have their own kind of catalogue, and this equipment is to be used in the studios specifically for music production students. But we also have a space called the kit room, where students can take out all manner of audio-visual equipment, and there is equipment dedicated to music production students, such as kind of portable mixing desks and things like that. I'm not going to do an extensive list here, but do take a look on our course website page, and there'll be a list of at least some of the softwares available in our studios and studio equipment. This is always being added to, and sometimes it's quite difficult to maintain what's on the course website, but it will give you a very good sense of what we have. And of course, we have studio computers and iMac workstations with a range of software. So again, I'm not going to go through that software now, but do take a look on the course website and you'll be able to see what we have. Of course, Ableton, Pro Tools, Logic, pure data programs, all sorts of things. So do take a look. So more college-wide facilities. So as we are University of the Arts London, and we are London College of Communication, where we have graphic design courses, film, photography, games design, animation, and so on. We have a whole host of other facilities available to students. So we have the spaces such as the Creative Technology Lab, which is kind of being signaled by this image at the top of somebody doing some soldering. So the Creative Technology Lab is where you could undertake kind of workshops in physical computing. So if you're somebody who likes to make their own pedals, or work with different, alternative instruments like Game Boys and toys, and you want to repurpose them for kind of musical purposes, the Creative Technology Lab is going to be great because you can really get to grips with how to do things like that, how to enhance your soldering skills. But they also run sign up workshops around kind of coding, working with kind of 360 audio or 270 audio, working with virtual reality. You might be a student who's particularly interested in music within a kind of games context. The Creative Technology Lab is going to be a really kind of great space for you to explore. We also have kind of printmaking studios and print and finishing services. These spaces are wonderful opportunities for students to print and make their own artwork, whether it be vinyl covers, whether it be cassette covers, CD, and so on. We have risograph machines, screen print, and so on. The technicians up there are incredibly helpful and very familiar with the kinds of work that different production students would want to undertake within the print spaces, and they'll be able to help you and give you inductions as to how to use those spaces. We have the digital space, which is kitted out with moving image software, editing software, Photoshop, InDesign, all manner of different software, which is open to students throughout the term. Photography studios, 3D workshops, of course, library services, the Crit Room, as I mentioned, college shop, and numerous gallery spaces that are used by staff, external organizations, and students throughout the year to showcase projects and work and so on. So I'm not going to do a really detailed breakdown of staff expertise, but I'll give a kind of brief review. And again, I would encourage you to go onto the course website and go to staff and teaching, and you can see where we've described and written about our kind of practice and research areas and our specialisms. So again, I'm Rachael Finney. I'm the course leader for MA Music Production. Here is a list of our wonderful associate lecturer team: Dr. Jake Williams, Dr. Paula Wolf, Dr. Bruno Werner, Dr. Kate Carr, Dr. Diego Benalcazar, Dr. Ed Baxter, Gareth Williams, and Martin Tibbetts. Our staff have a range of expertise, many of whom are practicing artists as well as producers. Many run record labels themselves, or work closely with a variety of different labels and studios. We have a range of composers working from kind of field recording to kind of pop and DJing. We have staff who specialize in kind of more industry practices and have been kind of managers and working in the industry for kind of decades, who again are here to kind of help you think about industry practices and how you can kind of navigate the industry. We have a wonderful kind of music production tech team headed up by Christopher Bork and Albert Duke, wonderful kind of studio technicians who have background in production, but also kind of engineering, and they're here to not only run the studios, but also to help students. So if you book the studio or one of the studios and you really want to kind of get a grips with the desk or a particular piece of equipment in there, you can flag that up to our tech team, who will be there to support you and go through the different equipment that you'd like to kind of explore. So they're really there to help students learn about how to use the studios and use the different equipment and facilities available. So again, some images here. I work, my kind of research interests are largely kind of histories of production as it relates to kind of pop and 20th century music. I'm also a practitioner. I work extensively with tape to produce both kind of recorded outputs, but also to rethink modes of kind of listening and consuming music. So I often kind of work in performance context and installation context as well. Tatine is the kind of group and performance work of Dr. Bruno Werner. We have an image of Kate Carr here, who is an expert in kind of field recording and like composition and composing with field recording and improvisation. They also run a label. Do take a look at the stuff and teaching page and have a read of all of our different kind of interests and expertise. So accreditation and partnerships. Our course is accredited by James, which is the Joint Audio Media Education Support. We are also an avid learning partner. We, of course, have Pro Tools available to students. You don't have to work with Pro Tools if you don't want to, but we, where possible, we do explore opportunities for students to undertake the Pro Tools certification. This is often aimed at our kind of BA cohort, but year on year, we do look at ways in which we can make this possible for MA students who might be interested. It's not a mandatory thing. It's a sign-up opportunity for students. And as we're part of the Sound and Music program in the Screen School, we are kind of connected to the Centre for Research into Sound Art Practice, known as CRISAP, and there's a little kind of about here, and I would again encourage you to take a look at the CRISAP page on UAL's website. CRISAP is an interdisciplinary kind of research centre broadly in the field of kind of sound arts practice. But sound arts practice is, again, incredibly elastic. So, work and thinking and projects do explore and think about sound and music, and things that are kind of sonic. So their conferences and talks and projects are highly relevant to music production students. So yeah, do explore and look at all the wonderful kind of projects and conferences and events that they host. We do encourage students to attend talks, to speak at conferences and so on, associated with CRISAP and otherwise. So do take a look at that. So I've spoken about collaboration quite a little bit, and spoken about how collaboration is part and parcel of a production practice, but also very important to our course. We do have a collaborative unit here at LCC, which students undertake in the spring term. And this is where our course kind of collaborates a little bit more kind of distinctly with an external organization, or cross-course collaboration. So here are just some of the different organizations that we've collaborated with in the past. So the Stanley Kubrick Archive, the music charity Carousel, UNESCO, LCC's very own kind of MA animation course, where students are working with MA animation students to develop kind of audio visual works for kind of 270 video, and the Creative Technology Lab, which I mentioned earlier. And we will, as a course, we continue to kind of expand the roster of kind of collaborative partners that we have. So we are connected to industry in a variety of ways. So we have, as mentioned, a regular visiting practitioner program where we invite a range of visiting practitioners to come and speak or give workshops to students. These include producers, artists, label executives, studio owners, and musicians, and so on. These are really useful opportunities, not only for students to get a sense of what it means to kind of work in a professional context, but also just opportunities for students to speak to and make connections with different kind of professionals. We also, where possible or where relevant, invite practitioners to run workshops, extracurricular workshops or masterclasses across a variety of topics, some of which I've written here have included creative uses of AI, working with pure data, abstract turntablism, which we did with Maria Chavez, and working with tape and so on. So we run these kind of regularly throughout the year. And the way in which these are organized is I often try, and speak to students to see what students would like to have run in terms of extracurricular activity and masterclass workshops. So as much as possible, we're a kind of highly responsive course, very keen to think about how we can genuinely and meaningfully support the kinds of things that students would like to undertake. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, but it's just a very brief kind of example of some of the speakers that we've had join us for MA Music Production. So Professor Susan Rogers joined us in our first year and gave a talk to students. Professor Rogers' kind of academic work is situated within music kind of cognition, but they also are very known for being the engineer for Prince. So a wonderful talk around their experiences in music cognition, but also their kind of professional work as an engineer for artists such as Prince. We had a talk and workshop run by Maria Chavez around abstract turntablism and their work as an artist. Elizabeth Bernholtz, known as Gazelle Twin, has come in and done an amazing artist talk talking about the kind of their practice as an artist, but also a kind of producer and working in different areas, starting to work in kind of mixed media, doing kind of film scoring and sound design for television and film and games. Mike Azarkas has joined us, as well as us having links to various London studios, such as Holy Mountain Studios, run by Misha Herring, where we've hosted kind of talks with Misha and also kind of run on-site workshops in his studios for MA students. So I want to shift now just to kind of talk briefly about the different elements of the application. So when applying for the MA, you submit a portfolio in addition to a kind of video task and a personal statement. So portfolio is a kind of collection of your work that is really trying to demonstrate how your creativity is developed over time. And really the kind of selections maybe that you want to consider when building your portfolio is work that shows your ability to work with different materials, to work with different themes, to work in different ways, using different techniques, as well as being able to show how you research and develop and plan your ideas. So when you start to build your portfolio, you have opportunity for kind of written sections beneath the kind of selected work in which you're encouraged to explain the work a little bit, like what were the underpinning ideas, what were the inquiries that were kind of motivating the work, what did you learn from it, what really have been the kind of key points for you from undertaking this work. What I would suggest is maybe less a thorough breakdown of process, but equally balanced across kind of inquiry, kind of process and realization, really. Like that's always really useful, not just how you did it, but why you did it and what are the implications of it now you've done it. It's useful to see work that shows kind of your experimentation and risks that you've taken along the way. So again, when you're thinking about work to select for your portfolio, don't shy away from work that you feel is maybe a problem for you. because you can write underneath about it. You can add some context as to what's going on and what actually has been really useful about a piece of work that was potentially quite challenging. Because it's really valuable to be able to see, your ability and your willingness to experiment. So each project should have a narrative, and what we mean by that is not necessarily a narrative inherent in the work itself, but a narrative in terms of the way that you're discussing it. So again, think about how the observer, how the person reviewing the application can understand the journey of the work. How did it begin? What are its inquiries? What were the kinds of things that you were trying to explore or think about? How did it develop? And then a kind of realization or an outcome. How did it begin? How did it emerge or manifest as a final piece or something that became more realized? And what are your thoughts on the way in which it's been realized? So the personal statement is a really important part of the application process. Um, Particularly for a postgraduate course, it's really important to try and share, why why you're selecting this particular course. You know, not all MAs are the same, and our MA in music production is going to be maybe quite different to another MA in music production. So it's really important that you take the time in your personal statement to address why this particular MA interests you, and why potentially you would choose this course. Um, do take opportunity in the personal statement to discuss your current creative practice. um, it's not necessary for you to discuss your practice history, but really we're interested in your current creative practice and how you feel this particular MA will help you achieve any kind of future plans that you have. Of course, please give some space to your research interests and the kind of research inquiries you wish to pursue at MA level. This is really valuable for us to get a sense of what are the kind of questions that you're interested in thinking about and exploring, whilst you undertake an MA. And again, we have a variety of different students on this course, all coming with very different kinds of inquiries. Some students particularly interested in the ways in which voice is recorded or what happens to voice, the singing voice once it becomes this kind of recorded object, what happens to it, or what are the implications of effects such as auto-tune on voice and how we understand voice or the pop vocal, let's say. Our students particularly interested in the ways in which digital audio workstations affect creativity or potentially affect the mixing process. What are the tensions between such a visual interface and the way in which we create and mix music? All manner of different kind of research inquiries. So take some time to reflect on what your research inquiries are and where you'd like to take those research inquiries through a master's program. And then, there's opportunity for you to discuss any kind of relevant education and experience that you feel helps kind of signal why you'd want to undertake this particular MA. And particularly if this is coming from prior education that isn't rooted in music production or music. If you're coming from a set of formal academic qualifications in a different field, then tell us about what you've been doing independently, or potentially how that field actually has informed your work within production. So yeah, do take time to try and kind of cover some of these points in your personal statement. And then the video task and study proposal. So part of the application requires you to record a kind of quite a short video. And this is really an opportunity for you to discuss potentially a piece of work that is in your portfolio in further detail. And again, it's an opportunity for you to use that example as a way to demonstrate what you're interested in. It's not necessarily about proving a particular set of skills, but it's about how does this work articulate some of the things you'd like to do in the future on an MA in music production. Of course, this is again, an opportunity for you to indicate fields of inquiry that you wish to explore. So again, acting a little bit like a study proposal, like what are the ideas? What are the things that interest you? Are there issues within music industry that interest you? Are there particular practices or kind of techniques related to production that you really want to kind of research further or think about? Are they more kind of cultural or kind of political or even philosophical kind of issues or ideas that you'd like to explore? This is opportunity for you to demonstrate your kind of current thinking and how you feel an MA will be able to enhance and kind of support that work. And then, of course, discuss what interests you about undertaking this particular MA in music production. I think, it's important for us, again, to get a sense of that and use the different elements of the application, the portfolio, the personal statement, and the video task as a way to expand on these different points. So that is all from me. Thank you for listening. Do, as I say, take a look at the course website and have a look at the teaching staff, looking at our research interests and so on, and specialisms. Do take a look at the kind of technical facilities pages to get a sense, more in-depth kind of breakdown of the different equipment and softwares, etc., that are available to you. If you can, do join us for an on-site open day. More than happy to kind of discuss kind of questions in person. And of course, my email is on the course website. So if you'd like to email me with a question, please feel free to do so. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.